Your time today. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Senator Pauline Hanson.
Thank you.
Enjoy your first speech, Senator.
I did.
It's been nearly a week since Pauline Hanson's controversial press club speech, and the reverberations continue.
Japan has a monoculture. So what's wrong with Australia have a monoculture? We must look at being Australians, and instead of all these different little individual groups who believe in their own cultures and their own laws, their own beliefs, and I don't think that will work.
Opening up a fresh debate over multiculturalism, which for decades has had bipartisan support. Today, the opposition leader appeared reluctant to endorse the concept.
How do you feel about Pauline Hanson's idea of monoculture being put in place in this country?
Well, the culture I want to see in this country is people in this country who believe in and support Australian values. We saw people at Bondi late last year who did not share those values. People coming to this country must adhere to these values.
With respect, sir, you've now dodged 4 questions in a row about whether multiculturalism is a policy aim that you would stand by. Is it or is it not?
I've answered that question 4 times.
One of the reasons why the Liberal Party is dying in his arms, Mr Speaker, is because his efforts to out one nation are becoming increasingly pathetic.
We have different people, different faiths, different ethnicities, different backgrounds are what make up Australia, and it must be said, have made up Australia forever.
Today's political contest turned increasingly bitter.
In March last year, the Prime Minister said, "I don't negotiate with the Greens." When will you stop lying?
I'm going to leave the option to withdraw to assist the House.
I withdraw.
This is a deliberate defiance of the conventions and traditions of this House.
The clash was yet another demonstration of how the One Nation leader is disrupting the political agenda.
I wasn't expecting it. I should.
Even though her vote remains largely irrelevant in the Parliament, where a deal was struck between the government and the Greens on tax reform.
It could have been so much better, but it is a small step in the right direction, and the Greens will vote to see it pass the Parliament this fortnight.
The deal means Labor's controversial plan to raise taxes from capital gains across all asset classes and eliminate negative gearing from established investment properties is expected to pass the Senate on Thursday.
These reforms are important. They're a result of an ambitious budget that was handed down in the interests of the Australian people.
Today, we found out that the government has done a dodgy deal with the Greens, a dangerous deal with the Greens, a dishonest deal with the Greens.
In exchange for the Greens' support, Labor has agreed to an 8-week delay in the passage of proposed NDIS cuts.
We've secured an extension to the inquiry into these inhumane cuts until at least the middle of August, and we will use that time to continue to build momentum to see this bill scrapped entirely.
A delay that will cost the budget a few $100 million in lost savings. But the government has acquiesced because of growing unease over consequences for some participants.
Big change in an area like this is often very confronting, and some of the evidence that we heard from the inquiry was obviously confronting as well. But the government remains convinced that this is absolutely the right package for the NDIS itself.
Today's Green Labor deal included an amendment to block self-managed super funds from borrowing to invest in residential property, closing a loophole the Greens said undermined the government's goal of giving first home buyers an advantage over well-heeled investors. If this was such an important loophole that people were going to take advantage of, why didn't you close it, when you announced the budget package on the 9th?
This is a worthy change, an important change, but it also reflects the realities in the Senate. Nobody's got a majority on their own, and so we engage in these negotiations.
The overhaul of property taxes comes after years of debate, 2 federal election losses for Labor and a 6-week post-budget fight with business groups and investors. The changes break promises taken to last year's election, but they also mark the most significant attempt to address the intergenerational housing crisis after decades of worsening affordability.
We want these reforms to work, but whether they do or not, frankly, is an open question.
Greens Senator Nick McKim joins me now. Senator McKim, welcome to 7:30.
Hi, Sarah.
Just on multiculturalism first, Angus Taylor was asked repeatedly today if he supported multiculturalism. He refused to give a straight answer, as Jacob just showed us. Are you concerned that if there was a change of government in Australia, multiculturalism could be axed as Australian policy?
I'm very concerned about that, and the big error that Angus Taylor is making is trying to outflank one nation to the right. That is doomed to fail, and it is doomed to try to set one Australian against another, neighbour against neighbour, people from different cultural backgrounds against each other. And in terms of migration and multiculturalism, just a reminder for Angus Taylor and Pauline Hanson, we're all migrants or descendants from migrants unless we're Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people.
Now, on to what Tim Wilson there called your dangerous, dishonest and dodgy deal with the government. You were always going to wave through the CGT changes, the tax changes. Is that why you only managed to secure a very minor change today relating to self-managed super funds?
Well, look, it is a pretty minor change. I accept that characterisation of it. And what I would actually say is the government's changes themselves are pretty minor. Like, this was a real political moment, a once-in-a-political generation opportunity to do something meaningful to fix the housing crisis. And unfortunately, Labor's lack of courage and Labor's lack of ambition in what they put forward means that Australia's housing crisis is going to be worse. It's going to be more harmful, worse than it needed to be, more harmful than it needed to be, and it's going to last for longer than it should have lasted for. And those things are on the Labor Party for their lack of ambition and courage.
But if that's the case, why didn't you fight further? I mean, is the reality here that the Greens couldn't be seen to be holding up tax changes that are supposed to help people get into housing when you suffered so much opprobrium for holding up housing bills in the first term of the government?
Well, we did vote through all of Labor's housing agenda in the last term, and holding it up for a short period of time did deliver another $3 billion into social and affordable housing. But in regards to the current package and the current scenario, frankly, we were worried. This Prime Minister and the Labor Party have got form in walking away or watering down difficult and progressive changes when the going gets a bit tough. And part of our calculus on this was a fear that if this debate went much longer, Labor would start watering it down and backing away from even the low ambition package that they put forward, as they have done on many other occasions during the 4 years of this government.
There are strong objections to the application of these capital gains tax changes to all assets, not just to housing, including and especially really from startups. Has the government offered enough, in your opinion, in its consultation paper to allow startups in Australia to thrive?
Well, we've heard the arguments put forward by people who are advocating on behalf of startups, including founders and employees of startups, and people who are advocating on behalf of, I guess you'd call it, the innovation ecosystem in the Australian economy. And we think some of those arguments do have merit. I think the government's put forward a discussion paper that will allow them to put in place appropriate supports and potentially appropriate carve-outs for those sectors. And we've committed to the government to negotiate in good faith with them once they put forward some more concrete proposals.
All right, well, I think we'll see, that will evolve next week. But today, in return for passing the government's tax bills, you get a longer inquiry into the changes to the NDIS. But the Greens wanted to kill the NDIS changes outright. Are you doing anything more than postponing its arrival for 2 months?
Well, absolutely, we want to see this terrible bill withdrawn, and that's because it is just so harmful in so many ways to countless disabled Australian people and the families that they have that support them in their disability. And yes, we want to see this bill killed, and we want to see, and we will do everything we can to make sure that happens. Now, what we've achieved is we've achieved a delay of 8 weeks. We've also achieved Labor support from some amendments that take out some of the worst elements of their NDIS legislation, and we're going to use that 8 weeks to campaign as hard as we can against this legislation, and we are calling on Labor to withdraw it, or we are calling on the Liberals to put their money where their mouth is and vote with the Greens to vote this legislation down when the time comes.
And yet the Coalition had already offered you a 6-month delay to these changes, not just the short delay that you have won, but you've chosen to go with a short extended inquiry. That doesn't sound like a party that's committed to killing a bill.
We are absolutely committed to fighting this bill with every tool in our toolkit. We've delayed it for 8 weeks. We've achieved some amendments that will take some of the worst elements out of this bill. And when this inquiry, this 8-week period is done, if we need another inquiry or more delay, then that's what we'll be moving for, and we will invite the Liberals to join us in that.
Now, the founders of the NDIS say its original purpose has been lost because it was only designed for those people with, quote, significant, permanent and profound disability, and it expanded way beyond that. That's not in question. They welcome, that is, the founders and creators of the NDIS, welcome reform to secure it for the future. Do you accept that principle?
We want the NDIS secured for the future, and we want it to support as many disabled people, disabled Australians as possible.
That is not... Sorry, let me just jump in there, because the founders of the NDIS are not saying they want it to support as many people as possible. They say they want it to return to its original purpose, that is serving people, regrettably, people with significant, permanent and profound disability. Are you saying the Greens' position is it should continue at its current growth rates?
What we are saying is it can continue to support the people it is currently supporting, and it can do that because politics and budgets are all about choices. And the government has left $33 billion on the table just in terms of its negative gearing reforms alone in the tax package we've just been talking about. They are spending nearly $400 billion over the next few decades on nuclear submarines, the AUKUS subs. They're going to make Australia a more dangerous place. There are plenty of budget savings opportunities or revenue raising opportunities that would allow the NDIS to continue to support all of the people that it's currently supporting. It's just that Labor is not prepared to make those choices.
And yet you say that in opposition to the people who fought tooth and nail to establish the NDIS, and they think that its growth should be constrained, that it's moved beyond its original purpose. But the Greens think they know better than the founders of the NDIS.
What we've done, Sarah, is we've listened really closely to the voices of disabled people that have been platformed through the inquiry that will now continue for another 8 weeks, thanks to the Greens. And we've listened to those voices, those heart-rending stories of the harms that Labor's agenda will cause, the withdrawal of desperately needed supports that allow disabled Australians to live a more dignified life and provide some respite and relief for families who put so much work into supporting disabled family members. Those are the voices that we are listening to, and they are the people that we are fighting for.
And yet you got assurances today from the government that the cuts are not being applied to daily living and transport and home modifications. So is it responsible for you, towards people who are in the NDIS, to keep talking about the risks of people dying when you receive those assurances from the government today?
Well, in fact, the risks of people dying were articulated really clearly by some of the brave witnesses that gave evidence at the inquiry that will now continue, and we have listened to those voices. We believe that Labor's agenda is punching down on disabled people. We're not going to have a bar of it, and we're going to fight it every step of the way.
You're making a kind of broad statement there, Senator McKim. I'm asking you about specifically about the assurances you received from Mark Butler, the Minister, today, who said that cuts are not applied to daily living and transport, home modifications, the things that there were concerns raised that people would no longer be able to get out of the home, to have dignity at home. He has reassured you that those are not the target of the cuts, but you're making the same argument as if you didn't hear those assurances.
We heard those assurances, and to be fair to Minister Butler, we take those assurances on face value, and we're not calling that into doubt. But there are many, many other elements to this legislation. I mean, this legislation is going to result in some disabled people not being able to take a shower every day, and that is just not acceptable to us, and we are listening not to the minister primarily, not to the architects of the scheme primarily. We are listening to disabled Australians and the disability community in Australia who are asking us to fight this legislation every step of the way, and that is absolutely what we'll be doing.
Senator McKim, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.